Welcome to the Hidden Mind. Today, let's explore the Stanford prison experiment, when a simple roleplay turned into a psychological nightmare. In the quiet summer of 1971, deep within a basement, at Stanford University, a space typically reserved for storage and forgotten files, became a stage, but this was no ordinary play. It was the setting for one of the most disturbing and controversial experiments in the history of psychology. The aim seems straightforward: to study the psychological effects of perceived power, focusing on the struggle between prisoners and prison officers. It began as a controlled, academic inquiry into human behavior, but very quickly, it spiraled into something far more raw, revealing the unsettling darkness that can surface when ordinary people are given extraordinary power. What was intended to be a 2-week simulation of prison life barely lasted 6 days, leaving behind a trail of psychological trauma and a legacy of questions that still haunt us today. How could a simple role-playing exercise turn into a real-life psychological horror story? The answer, as we'll see, is as complex as it is chilling. To set up this elaborate simulation, psychologist Philip Zimbardo and his team of researchers placed an advertisement in a local newspaper. It called for male college students to participate in a psychological study of prison life, offering $15 a day, a decent sum for a student back then. Over 70 applicants responded, and from this pool, 24 were selected. These were not men with criminal records or pre-existing psychological issues. They were chosen precisely because they were deemed healthy, stable, and psychologically normal. They were, in every sense, average young men. By a simple coin toss, their fates were sealed. Half were assigned the role of guards, and the other half, prisoners. They all understood it was a simulation, a temporary game where they would act out their assigned parts. The basement of Stanford's psychology building was transformed into a mock prison, complete with makeshift cells, a solitary confinement closet, and a main yard. The prisoners were unceremoniously arrested at their homes by real Palo Alto police officers, charged with armed robbery, and taken to the station. They were fingerprinted, blindfolded, and then transported to the Stanford County Jail. There, they were stripped, deloused with a spray, and made to wear ill-fitting smocks with their ID numbers printed on them. They were no longer individuals. They were numbers. The guards, on the other hand, were given khaki uniforms, mirrored sunglasses to prevent eye contact, and wooden batons to symbolize their authority. They were instructed to maintain order and command respect, but they were given no specific training on how to do so. The power was theirs to define. At first, it felt awkward, like a high school play, but as the first day bled into the second, something profound began to shift. The uniforms weren't just costumes anymore. They were becoming identities. The power wasn't just symbolic, it was starting to feel real. And with that shift, the experiment took its first dark turn. The descent into cruelty was not a sudden plunge, but a gradual slide. It began subtly. The gods, working in 8-hour shifts, started to experiment with their newfound authority. They woke the prisoners in the middle of the night for counts, forcing them to recite their numbers. They used push-ups as a form of physical punishment for minor infractions. Initially, it seemed like they were merely getting into character, exploring the boundaries of their roles. But the line between acting and being blurred with alarming speed. A rebellion broke out on the second day. The prisoners barricaded their cell doors with their beds and taunted the guards. The guards' response was swift and disproportionate. They used a fire extinguisher to force the prisoners away from the doors, stripped them naked, took away their beds, and placed the ringleaders in solitary confinement. This event was a critical turning point. The guards began to see the prisoners not as fellow students in an experiment, but as a genuine threat to their authority, a troublesome group that needed to be controlled. The psychological abuse escalated. The guards implemented systems of reward and punishment, giving privileges to the good prisoners to break the solidarity among the group. They denied them basic rights, like using the toilet, forcing them to use buckets in their cells instead. The humiliation was relentless and systematic. The prisoners, in turn, began to internalize their roles. They became passive, helpless, and disorganized. Some showed signs of severe emotional distress, crying uncontrollably and exhibiting acute anxiety. One prisoner had to be released after just 36 hours because he was suffering from a psychological breakdown. He was no longer playing a role, he was living a nightmare. Philip Zimbardo, who had cast himself as the prison superintendent, watched all of this unfold from his command center. He, too, was becoming consumed by his role. Instead of viewing the escalating abuse as a sign to stop the experiment, he saw it as a confirmation of his hypothesis about the power of the situation. The line between researcher and participant, between objective observer and active enabler, had completely disappeared. The experiment was no longer just an experiment. It was a real prison, created and sustained by the very people who were supposed to be studying it. By the 5th day, the atmosphere in the basement had become toxic. The playful energy of the first few hours was a distant memory, replaced by a palpable sense of despair and dread. The guards had split into 3 groups. Those who were actively cruel and inventive in their sadism, those who were tough but fair and followed the rules, and a minority who were passive and did not actively engage in the abuse, but did nothing to stop it. The prisoners were broken. They were no longer a unified group, but a collection of traumatized individuals, their spirits crushed by the constant degradation. They spoke of parola, not of quitting the experiment. Their sense of reality had been warped to the point where they believed they were genuinely incarcerated. The breaking point finally came not from within the experiment, but from an outsider. Christina Maslach, a recent Stanford PhD, who was dating Zimbardo at the time, was brought in to conduct interviews with the participants. When she saw the conditions day guards marching the prisoners, bags over their heads, to the toilet, she was horrified. She confronted Zimbardo, challenging the morality of what was happening. She told him, "It's terrible what you are doing to these boys." Her objection served as a powerful shock, a voice of reason from the outside world that finally penetrated the twisted reality of the mock prison. It was her visceral, emotional reaction that forced Zimbardo to see the experiment for what it had become, an unethical and dangerous situation that was causing genuine harm. He had been so immersed in his role as superintendent that he had lost his ethical compass as a psychologist. On the morning of the 6th day, Zimbardo gathered the participants and announced that the experiment was over. It was originally scheduled to last for 14 days. The illusion of control was shattered. What they had collectively uncovered in that short, intense period was terrifying. The potential for cruelty doesn't just belong to monstrous individuals. It lies dormant within ordinary people, waiting for a situation to unlock it. The Stanford prison experiment was officially over, but its legacy was just beginning. In the immediate aftermath, the participants were debriefed, and the psychological fallout became clear. The prisoners were traumatized, and the guards were shocked and confused by their own behavior. Many expressed disbelief that they were capable of such cruelty. Even Zimbardo himself was deeply affected, forced to confront the fact that he had become a perpetrator in his own study. The experiment became a landmark case in psychology, but also a stark warning. It demonstrated, in the most visceral way, the power of the situation to shape human behavior. It suggested that our morality is not as fixed as we'd like to believe. Place a good person in a bad situation, give them a uniform, a role, an unchecked power, and they can be transformed. The findings have been cited for decades to explain atrocities from the Holocaust to the abuses at Abu Ghraib prison. It forces us to ask uncomfortable questions. Are we all capable of such acts? Is evil a product of our character, or is it a product of our environment? However, the experiment has also faced significant criticism over the years. Scholars have questioned its methodology, pointing out that Zimbardo may have implicitly coached the guards to be abusive, a phenomenon known as demand characteristics. They argued that the participants weren't just naturally falling into roles, but were actively performing the behavior they thought the researchers wanted to see. Despite these valid critiques, the story of the Stanford prison experiment endures. It serves as a powerful, cautionary tale about the corrupting influence of power and the ease with which we can dehumanize others when we are separated by roles and labels. In the end, the prison they built in that Stanford basement wasn't just a physical space. It was a mirror, a dark, unsettling mirror reflecting the fragility of human kindness and the terrifying potential that lies within us all. Thank you for joining us on this exploration of the human mind. If this story resonated with you, Please consider liking this video and subscribing to The Hidden Mind for more deep dives into the forces that shape our world. Stay curious and stay thoughtful.